Okay, we're back. Well, you guys never went away. I went away for a couple of months, but I think I'm going to come back maybe when you guys are talking about music documentaries and stuff, because that just seems to be the space I'm most comfortable in. But anyway, so this is episode whatever of What They Said. Stephen, Phil, and Scott stay home and watch movies. And this is February 2022 edition, part one. Stephen and Phil are going to record another episode or another part to this one after another day. But the three of us are going to discuss Poly Styrene, I Am a Cliché. I think that's the name of the film. We all just watched it, I think, within the last few days, getting a lot of acclaim. So I guess, we'll go around and say what we each think, but do you want to say a few things off the top just about the movie itself? Like, I believe it's co-directed, right, by her daughter and another fellow, Paul Singh. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. It's Sung. Okay, so it's SNG. He's Chinese, British, I think. And I think it feels like it's been in the works for a long time. And there was a lot of press about it about a year ago. I was seeing podcasts about it on Spotify and stuff, but I don't know if it was released much earlier in the UK or something, but it's officially out now, I guess. And I think we all streamed it. I watched it on YouTube. Any opening thoughts from anyone on it? Or
I think it's been out for a few months in the UK, maybe 4 or 5. I think people started posting about it on ILX. I think you did too, Stephen, right? Did you contribute money to the?
I remember, and so when it got to the closing credits, I looked to see if my name was on there.
Same here.
I looked to see if Phil's were on it. I didn't see your name, Phil, because you mentioned
I didn't see my name. So maybe I didn't give money.
Sorry, did you give money?
I don't think so. Or my name.
Oh, no, that's not true. I gave money. But okay. you have to give a lot of money to get your name.
Oh, okay.
I think I contributed $25. I got a postcard, a Poly Styrene postcard. But yeah, I still check for my name. But if they put everybody's name who contributed $25, they'd be rolling like 1,000.
Well, that's what I thought. The list was kind of small. Yeah. So
I think it was probably, I'm going to guess $500 to get your name on the credits. I don't even think $100 to get your name on the credits.
Yeah.
Anyway, they started. I went back because it did seem forever to take out. To get released. I went back to my email to check when I got the first email from them acknowledging the receipt. And that was acknowledging the donation. That was 2017, which wasn't as long as I thought it was. It seemed like a decade. I would get these updates. I think the last update I scanned past it. It was I Am Poly Styrene update number 16. So, you get updates and it just, when's it coming out? When's it coming out?
Can we just quickly mention too that I don't know, Stephen, if you had a chance to watch it, we might roll in a few comments about
the BBC show.
Yeah, the 1979 BBC documentary, which Phil told me about. I'd never seen, and boy, am I glad I watched that. What was it called again? Who is Poly Styrene? I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That was fantastic. But
I didn't know it was a BBC anthology, something that shows up every week or something.
Yeah,
it was just an episode
called Arena or something like that.
I don't know what their normal topics are. I think it's been going on for decades, but I was just stunned. I mean, yeah, I also watched it, but the idea that BBC devoted 45 minutes in 1979 to something called Who is Poly Styrene?
So it was 79. That's
right. Yeah, 79. Yep, 79.
I mean, I would understand if when they would say, who is Rod Stewart, say, or somebody that was large in that way. Poly Styrene is a much more interesting topic, and the question, who is she, is an interesting topic. But I admit, I was pleasantly surprised that such a thing existed.
Well, I think it drove home for me a little more than the new documentary did, maybe, that she was actually she was quite famous in Britain. I think X-Ray Specs, they did chart records, right? And I think because she was a woman and she was, you know, for the time, quite unusual for a pop star. I have a feeling she was much bigger there than we were aware in North America. Like, I don't think she was, I would say she was maybe someone on the verge of superstardom, but I think she was big enough that she was well known. I think, and they did have like at least a few top 40. I don't know if they call it the top 40 in the UK. It's a different chart system, but they did chart hits. So
They were on top of the pops at least twice, because
Mhm.
those clips turn up all the time, and there's two different, she's wearing two different things, so she must have been on at least twice.
yeah,
The
Germ-Free
album,
Adolescence was not released in the US for till the 90s.
and it came out late in Britain. I checked the date. It didn't come out till November 10th, 78.
Yeah.
oh well.
So that BBC thing was probably done not too
Mhm.
long after. And I mean, I haven't watched it for a while. If you just watched it, you're making this point that she was really known. That was one thing I questioned about the film, and I guess they're right, because they say, you know, when they break up, it's presented in the film. They actually use the words here. I've got it right here. Hang on a second. They use the words at the height of their success. And I thought, really, is that true? They were that successful? But maybe they were.
And I wouldn't overstate the case. I mean, I wasn't there obviously either, but I think they were, I think like for the punk bands, they were fairly like maybe like a middle tier band. Like they weren't the Clash or the Sex Pistols,
Right.
in terms of their popularity, but and I think her, you know, who she was probably contributed a lot to that. Cause like I say, she was kind of a new, unusual sort of pop star. So
Yeah.
which I mean in the most complimentary way, of course, but
Right. So I don't know. I'll just throw out one thing, because I just finished watching it, sort of semi-watching it a second time. The thing that what slows down the film, it's not ruinous or anything. I like the film, but I just find her daughter's narration so bland. Her manner of speaking, you know, it's so slow. They have so many shots of her walking away from the camera, and she's got a certain style of narration that I like the film better when her daughter is not talking. And her daughter talks a lot, and she has every right to. She directed it, she wrote it, it's her mom, she raised the money to make it. It was obviously very important and cathartic to her. So I understand all of that, but just for me watching, I would have liked to film with less of her.
It raises the question, at least it did for me. There's more than one way to look at this. Partly it's just like we're talking now, what kind of a movie it was. But because of the subject matter, we could spend this whole conversation talking about Poly Styrene and X-Ray Specs and not even talk about the movie.
Exactly, which is why I was going to do,
you know, that was important.
which I didn't do.
And then the film itself, because of the participation of the daughter, that gives it an angle that you don't often see in a documentary. She wasn't a detached voice. She might have been bland about it, but she was telling her story as part of the story of her mother, and that made it different. And that had nothing to do with the music angle. So partly I'm watching it and thinking, oh, I want to see another concert video or whatever. And part of me, I'm thinking, oh, I didn't know that about Poly Styrene. And part of me, I was interested in just trying to figure out what would it be like if that was your mother. And she starts the movie, I think, is when she says right off, people would say, what kind of a mother was she? Well,
And then she imagines her mother making fun of that question.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what a banal question or something like that. Or, yeah, I think I think I sort of agree with Phil on that, X. Yeah, in general, the film overall for me had a little bit of a draggy quality. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Like I found even in the first half of it, it didn't quite have the sort of musical charge that maybe I wanted, and maybe that's to Steven's point. Like you kind of yearn for that typical, you want to be excited by the music and stuff like that. I'm not saying there was none of that. There were definitely some great scenes, but it didn't, there's something in the pacing or something that just I felt didn't quite have the electricity that I kind of wanted. But I mean, there were some very good things about the film too. One thing I really liked a lot, and I was, excuse me, trying to pay a little more attention to my second viewing, although as I told you guys before, my second viewing got cut off, so I really have seen it about 1.5 times. But I thought they made a really quite imaginative use of photographs in the movie. I kind of like the photos, the way they use them in some, I mean, there's some great video footage obviously as well. They do a lot of that thing that I think Stephen mentioned in one of the earlier conversations we had about a documentary where they sort of inserted a lot of stock footage, and some, ever since Stephen pointed that out, I kind of see that more in documentaries, and it kind of bothers me a little bit. But I love the way they just sort of would have these spread of photographs. And obviously she's incredibly photogenic. She wears like incredible clothes, like just very like unique outfits and stuff. And just the way they did it somehow, there are a few times I was thinking, wow, those are great photos. And they're really giving you a chance to sort of look at them a little bit too. They're not like just flashing them across the screen at a super fast pace or something. So I appreciated that for sure.
Couple of really good photos. There was one of her where somebody said I first saw her in her clothes boutique. She ran a little, and she saw clothes at one point. And they had a picture of her, and the voiceover described what she was wearing. And then there was another great photo. It was the one at Lydon's place where you've got Sid Vicious, Nancy Spungen, Lydon.
That was great.
And her, and then you almost don't realize, oh yeah, that's her. She's sitting there too.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were some great photographs for sure.
I was even as I was wishing there was, I guess, more. I mean, they hit the high spots and the low spots. I suppose you could say the low spots in her life. But I could have watched another half hour and learned even more. Except one of my least favorite genres is the biopic. And I couldn't help but imagining if they made a biopic of Styrene, how awful it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they could get someone to play her that got nominated for an Oscar. So it's the kind of thing that's kind of easy to get a nomination for. Could do a good job. But they would invent a whole story to fit her life. They would fill in those things that I wanted filled in this documentary, but they'd fill it in all sorts of stupid ways. So for that, I was glad it was an actual documentary and not some story about, when Poly went off to the Hare Krishnas or whatever.
Unless they did it in like if they did it sort of more like a Todd Haynes kind of thing, and maybe not in a totally linear fashion. But I agree with you. It almost like it has that. The worst thing about biopics is it's such a predictable arc, right? Even though it might be true to the story, just as a movie device, it becomes so predictable. They have this interesting childhood or something, then they have this great rise to the top, and then they have this fall, and then there's a redemption of some sort at the end, and it's just so utterly predictable. But that is kind of what her life sort of had in a way. So
the documentary had that too.
Well, that's what I mean. But at least I think what Stephen's saying is it was at least the real thing. They don't have to add the dramatic element on top of the story that already exists, right?
Well, you saw who did the narration for her voice, right, Stephen?
Ruth Nega?
Yeah, from Passing.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, that's who that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And also like the people they chose to comment. Nana Cherry saying, she's why I became a singer. Various people from the time and time since then. That was one of the ways that not just what Poly Styrene meant in 1978, 79, but how she still had an influence on people. Nobody ever said the term riot girl, but geez, that was even I noticed how much her daughter looked like her. At least I thought so.
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
And then I started looking at it and I thought, you know what? Corin Tucker looks like that too. And
They're
then I
all
remembered
children of Poly. Yeah.
there's a big, when Corn had her own band, Corn Tucker Band, they made a video about a kid who runs off to an X-Ray Specs concert.
Oh,
They get to the concert, Corn's playing Poly Styrene, and so she's got the look.
Wow.
You know, I was like, this is a, you know, I don't know how they put that in a documentary about Poly Styrene, but
I noticed they did what more documentaries seem to be doing now too, and I usually like it. Is they didn't show a
I
lot
was
of
just
the
going to
talking
say
heads,
that.
right?
That's what I was just going to say, Scott.
Which I think is better sometimes. I find it gets too like it's self-flattering or something. It comes off that way when they show these. It looks more like pontificating or something when they show them, and when you don't see them, it's more. It feels like more pure
I think you're
narration to
right.
me. Like I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but
I'm sure like all of us could make a list of at least 12 other people we would like to have heard from. I'm not saying the list would be the same, but you know.
well, here. No, go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just gonna. No, you make your point. I've got a big.
No. Mine actually is starting to stray a little bit from this particular
Okay.
documentary into the other one too. So you go first.
So the one thing that I think I had the same misgiving about the Velvet Underground documentary, although I thought it was, in a way, it was even, to me, it was more so in this film. And I don't know, you might not agree, but it just didn't. Part of the excitement of X-Ray Specs or any band from that time is being part of this larger thing, and it was very focused on them. And I don't know, I'd like to see more. You know, this band put out this, and then this band followed with this, and this band, they were trying to top each other. And how do they fit into that story? Like, I was surprised when I saw how late their album came out, and that makes a difference. You know, the Sex Pistols, when's that last show, Stephen? That's already happened.
78, yeah, early 78.
So that's already happened, and you don't know that from watching the film. I like to know stuff like that. And it reminds me of that moment, reminds me of the mid 60s. And whenever you read about the mid 60s or see a film of the mid 60s, you usually get a sense of, okay, the Beatles put out this, and then Dylan put out this, and then the Beach Boys put out Pet Sounds. And I do like that context, which I felt that because it's her, you know, because you say it's also the daughter's story, and that's to her, sure that's just not important at all.
Well, and it says in the title, Poly Styrene. It doesn't say.
Yep, I know.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I would watch that movie that you're describing. I don't think it necessarily needs to be this movie. That's all.
Yeah. I guess maybe it should be a different movie, just a movie about that moment.
Well, the other thing I would offer, and I mean, I'm not saying this because I'm not pushing back on what you're saying, because in some respects I do agree.
Yeah.
But I also think that, because one of my thoughts, one thing I really felt I took away about Poly Styrene from both this and the BBC documentary from 1979 is that she just had this like quality that even like at her like high mark and stuff when they were doing great and all that, she was just so detached from the idea of being a pop star, and it was genuine. Like it was, you know, all the punk bands kind of played that up as a pose a little bit, like, you know, we're not rock stars and all that stuff. I found like her demeanor was very interesting. Like the only time in some ways she really seemed super charged up was when she'd be on stage, and presumably when she was recording her music and stuff. She seemed so detached. So I don't know, like if you're making a movie about Poly Styrene, and I don't know if there's much of a scene to attach to it. Like the New York segment was very interesting because it just seemed like, well, apparently it sounded like she had some kind of drugs, some, you know, had some weird drug trip, and that's what kind of like started her sort of descent or whatever. But it just seemed like she was just felt so detached from the whole punk scene in general. And obviously New York, she makes it clear that it was just very different than it was in the UK. But I just never felt like she just seems so apart even from the punk scene in many ways. So I don't know if they could rope in other punk stuff as successfully. If you did a movie like that about Johnny Lydon or something, I think he did have a whole scene around him. And apparently people used to hang out at his flat all the time, like all the bands and all these hangers on and stuff. So you could credibly do something like that. But I'm just wondering if that maybe has something to do,
Maybe.
like maybe it's just not a big part of her story, maybe, right?
Yeah. I
But
mean,
it
did she
ties-
have a relationship with the adverts, with Gail Advert? Was she friends with the
Well,
raincoats or
I don't know.
the slits or anything like that? I don't know.
Well, this ties in with what you're saying. One thing I didn't get from either documentary, and for some reason I'm just really curious about it, is like what made Poly Styrene want to even be in a band? Like I have never, and I was even reading some stuff I have on her, like just in various books and stuff. I pulled some books off the shelf and was looking up X-ray specs in the index and stuff. I could not find one instance of like what kind of music like turned Poly Styrene on when she was a kid, or what. I mean, I
No,
think
they
she was
don't.
inspired by seeing the Sex Pistols. They do make that clear. But like, was
Yeah.
she listening to records, and was she like a big music lover? Like you just don't really get any of that sense. So that sort of ties in a little bit with what you're saying. I mean, there's some
I got the
context that's
feeling that
not there.
she always wrote, you know,
Yeah.
she was writing stuff, and I forget which of the two movies it was in, but where she would be reciting her lyrics, not singing them, reciting them.
Yeah.
And she took her lyrics very seriously, and she'd been at it for a while. She was blown away by the Sex Pistols. I think at that point, you're a teenager, you write lyrics, and you see a punk, and you go, I'll form my band. I think that's how it went. I think
That
that
makes sense.
even down to her singing, which is, we'll say, idiosyncratic. She sang how she sang. She wasn't concerned about, oh, I'm supposed to sound like, I don't know, Lulu. I don't know why she came to mind, but because what she wanted to do was get her lyrics across as powerfully as she could. So I think that the lyrics were what were crucial for her. Also, I think that that detachment you talk about, I think she explains it herself. She says, there's polystyrene. I invented polystyrene. I'm not polystyrene.
Mm.
I wish that people would understand that I'm not polystyrene. And she would say, sometimes I just want to be all by myself.
Yeah.
So someone will ask me, are you polystyrene? And, now, you know, people like that sort of make their own bed, so to speak. She invented polystyrene. She became a pop star. And then she didn't want to be the pop star. That's it's a tough thing to be. I'm not dismissing her or anything. But I think that's where the distancing comes from, is the ways that she almost had to put a barrier up between herself and the person that she created.
It was this film where they had her lyrics or her poetry from before X-ray specs, and I copied down one thing. There was a poem where it was called Half Caste, which is writing about her racial situation, and there was a line in that sounds like right out of an X-ray specs song. The line is, "I'm infiltrating, can't you see?"
Yeah.
You know, I mean, she's almost writing X-ray specs lyrics at that point.
Mm. By the way, one of the I had to write a line down from the BBC documentary that I thought was just great. Like it's like, and this was at the time, so it's not looking back in retrospect. There was a scene towards the end where she's being interviewed by a woman, and one of the things the woman, and I think it's an American woman too. I don't think she had a British accent. But the question she said, or the comment she says to Poly Styrene, I thought was very insightful. She goes, "Sometimes I listen to the songs and they sound sad to me." And I thought that was very interesting. Like, you can kind of maybe hear that now. I don't know what my point is with that, but you know, again, I think this woman was kind of hearing something in the music, that some of that detachment or something, or a bit of a sadness that I don't think when I first heard X-ray specs, I would have picked up on that. I mean, I don't know.
That's what I remember. I watched that BBC thing probably 3 years ago. I didn't watch it again before this, but I remember a certain sadness about it. I sort of remember her just traipsing around from radio station to radio station, and not being happy, kind of looking kind of lost.
Yeah, and this woman kind of heard it in the music too, which was kind of interesting. So, but
I need to ask, I'm pretty sure that this is UK, not the Queen, including Canada. But I have to ask, because we're talking about lyrics, especially in the punk era, I love the music so much. I never knew what the hell they were saying. There were never lyric sheets. So the class would be like, blah, 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 blah. I didn't care. It didn't matter. I couldn't sing. And X-Ray Specs, you guys read that thing I wrote, but I talked about singing along to Old Bondage, and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. So I wanted to finally figure out in the song Germ Free Adolescence, the chorus, so to speak, where she says, away, away, away. I got to find out what it is. So I looked it up. You guys know what that is?
Scrub away the SO, but the SOA.
The SR way.
Oh, SR.
Oh yeah, the SRA. What does that mean?
Okay, well that's it. I looked at that and now I know what it is. What the hell is the SR way? So I looked that up. SR is the name of a toothpaste, and maybe a Scrub Away might have even been one of their jingles or something in a TV commercial.
It's funny because I was thinking
part of the context of the song, which is about being germaphobe and everything. She's talking about you got to scrub the SR way.
Well, I was sort of tying it in with. I was thinking, is the SOA another version of like the MPLA or the UDA?
Exactly.
I still never knew when I was a kid. I was always so fascinated. But what is is this the UDA? I don't. What is the UDA?
Yeah, exactly.
Is this the MPLA? It just sounded so great the way he sang it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they're just political institutions or something like that. I think I did once look up the MPLA, and I think it is like maybe a parliamentary thing or something. I'm probably really stupid for saying that. It's probably something completely different. But yeah, so I always thought the SOA was it's just another sort of acronym like that.
I was surprised to find out it was SR way.
Okay, that's
SOA
funny.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
SR, that was something separate from way. Anyway.
It's tingling fresh. It's fresh as ice. It's Gibbs SR toothpaste, the tingling fresh toothpaste that does your gums good too. The tingle you get when you brush with SR is much more than a nice taste. It's a tingle of health. It tells you something very important, that you're doing your gums good and toughening them to resist infection.